In this lesson, we'll learn about the wrap deformer. The wrap deformer lets us deform deformable objects, meaning NURB surfaces, polygonal surfaces, and also lattices. We can deform those objects by other polygonal or NURB surfaces. So this is great for, let's say, deforming a high-res mesh by the result of a low-res mesh. So ideally in animation, you'd want to animate on a lower res mesh just for speed, and then you can use something like the wrap deformer to drive your high-res mesh when you're ready to render. So this is a really neat deformer. Let's go ahead and learn how it works. Let's go ahead and head over to our outliner, and we'll expand our wolf group. So what we want to do first is grab our target mesh, the one that will be deformed, which in this case is our face high object. Let's go ahead and grab that first. And then we'll want to grab our influence mesh, which is our low res face. So we'll go ahead and control click that. So at this point, we're ready to head over to create deformers, wrap, and we'll go ahead and take a look at the options. So at the top we have exclusive bind. This creates more of a rigid bind type of result where each point on your influence mesh directly affects the target mesh. This is only used for polygonal surfaces, but it does a really good job. Next we have our auto weight threshold. So what this means is that Maya's going to do the best it can to match both surfaces by the distance between the two surfaces. This also works very well. However, with it, we're not able to adjust any other settings as far as the manual threshold and the max distance is concerned. With this off, we can now have access to set our own weight threshold and also our max distance. And just to speak a little bit more about the max distance, this works out very well as we start to lower this max distance value. We get a more accurate wrap. However, as we start to drop this value, expect your memory to also get higher. So for instance, if we were to set this max distance to 0, we'd have a really good wrap in the end. However, that would also maximize our memory. So keep that in mind when using this. What's great is that, let's say if we were to use auto weight threshold and we didn't quite like the results of that, well, we could always go back to it via the channel box or the attribute editor and turn that off. So we don't have to do it from the option box. We don't have to keep creating this wrap deformer. We most certainly can adjust these settings elsewhere. Next, we can either turn on or off the render of our influence object. So even if it's visible in the scene, I can go ahead and show you that. If we were to go ahead and show our high res and go ahead and apply the wrap deformer, choose create. Okay, notice we have two meshes in the scene. However, if we were to go ahead and render this out, you'll only see one mesh, the high res. So that's a really neat feature. So now that we have applied the wrap deformer, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we can go ahead and grab our jawbone. I'll go ahead and hide the low res, and you'll see that we get a really nice result. So we start to deform our creature. You can grab the head bone and start to move that around. This is really nice. You might find this useful for, let's say, facial rigging. Again, you can rig a lower res face and then wrap deform to your high res face. Or essentially what you can do with this, so another neat tool again for facial rigging, is you can basically rig, let's say, a detached head and then use a wrap deformer to drive the head that is attached to the rest of the body. So we teach a technique like that in our human face rigging course if you're interested. Now let's go ahead and talk about what happens in the outliner. You'll see that an extra object has been created. Maya basically clones the influence mesh and makes that a base object. So what that means is that as the high res starts to offset from the base, that's how our deformations are created. Now if we were to select our high res or low res just to get to our inputs, just want to show you this, underneath wrap, again we can get back to those same settings that we saw in our option box. Now what we didn't quite discuss was the fall off mode. So we have volume and we also have surface. Volume is great for what we're working on here, matching a high res to a low res, because it looks at the distance between the two meshes. Now the surface fall off mode, this basically is going to do exactly what it said. It's going to calculate your deformations based off of the surface distance. Now if you're going to use the wrap deformer for a high res mesh, chances are you're going to want to work with volume instead of surface. Volume is going to be more accurate. It's going to give you more of the result you're looking for. But in this lesson, what we have learned is how to work with the wrap deformer tool. Again, a wonderful tool when wanting to deform an object by a polygonal or NURB surface. We could actually even use NURBS curves to deform with the wrap deformer tool. So this is a really neat feature, and you'll more than likely use it often in production, as it is very helpful for making sure you are working with an efficient workflow in animation.